Hey everyone, it's Blake, 32 years old here. If you're listening to this, you're about to dive headfirst into a story that's been 7 years in the making. 7 years of silence. 7 years of being the family's black sheep. The one who dared to dream differently, who walked away from a gilded cage to build something from the ground up. And tonight, that cage is about to crack wide open. Before we dive into this incredibly awkward, utterly unbelievable night, tell me, have you ever had to prove your worth to people who should have believed in you from the start? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonates with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more tales of resilience, unexpected triumphs, and proving everyone wrong. Now let's get into it, because sometimes the hardest reservations to make are with your own past. This isn't just any restaurant. This is Aurora, currently New York City's most exclusive, most talked about culinary destination. It's the kind of place where you need reservations months in advance, where a single dinner bill can feel like a down payment on a small car. It's also the kind of place my family, the mighty Evans clan of Boston, known for their old money, their Ivy League degrees, and their ironclad grip on the financial world, wouldn't dream of setting foot in unless it was for the most exquisite of occasions. And tonight, that occasion is my sister Chloe's engagement dinner. Here, at my restaurant. The irony isn't lost on me. For years, my parents Alistair and Eleanor Evans paraded my older sister Chloe and brother Liam around like trophies. Chloe, the Harvard Law graduate destined for corporate greatness. Liam, the Yale man, groomed to take over the family's multi-million-dollar investment fund. And me, I was just Blake. The middle child with creative inclinations, which in Evans speak meant a strange hobby that will never amount to anything. While they were discussing IPOs and legal precedents, I was buried in circuit boards and code, dreaming of building a tech empire, not inheriting one. My father's words still echo in my head. You'll be a nameless computer engineer, Blake, nothing more. A servant to those who truly innovate. He said it with a sneer, a dismissive wave of his hand, as if my passion was a contagious disease. They told me to be practical, to be like them. But how do you suppress something that feels like the very core of your being? I tried. I went to Harvard just like they wanted. Yet even amidst the hallowed halls of academia, my fingers etched for a keyboard. My mind buzzed with algorithms, not balance sheets. It was in an underground coding club, fueled by cheap coffee and pure adrenaline, that I truly came alive. That's where I met Chloe, not my sister, but my mentor, a brilliant, unconventional tech genius who saw something in me no one else ever had. You're wasting your talent here, kid, she told me, her eyes glinting with a shared rebellious spirit. Go build something real. So I did. I walked away from Harvard, from the family name, from the comfort of their generational wealth. And their reaction, nuclear. My father cut me off completely. My sister Chloe laughed in my face. Always the rebel Blake. Let's see how long you last living off ramen noodles and coding for minimum wage. Liam just looked at me with a mix of pity and embarrassment, as if I'd suddenly declared I was joining a circus. That night, I packed one small suitcase, took what little savings I had, and plunged headfirst into the chaotic, brutal, yet exhilarating world of tech startups in New York City. The next 7 years, they were a blur of 18-hour days, sleeping under desks, with ramen noodles becoming a luxury, and enough rejections from investors to wallpaper a small apartment. But I clung to that one spark, the vision of Aurora Labs, a company that would revolutionize the intersection of AI and gastronomy. And then 2 years ago, a miracle happened. A visionary investor, Cassandra, tasted my prototype AI-driven culinary insights at a tech demo, and she saw it. She saw my vision. From that, the idea of Aurora the restaurant was born. A living, breathing testament to what happens when passion meets relentless innovation. It's become a Michelin-starred sensation, lauded by every major culinary and tech publication. And my family, they know I'm doing something with computers and food, but they have no idea what. And that my friends was entirely intentional. Tonight, as I push open these heavy glass doors ready to face them, my stomach is a knot of nerves and anticipation. I've spent years earning recognition on my own terms, not seeking their approval. So, when that engraved invitation landed on my desk, listing my own restaurant as the venue, I knew this was it. This was the moment. The final act. The last time I'll play the part of the struggling black sheep. The familiar scent of meticulously sourced ingredients, the earthy aroma of white truffles, the bright citrus notes of yuzu, the subtle perfume of freshly picked herbs, enveloped me as I stepped through Aurora's heavy glass doors. Usually, this aroma centers me a grounding reminder of everything I've built. Tonight, it only intensifies the knot in my stomach. I'd chosen my outfit with deliberate care, a simple, impeccably tailored black suit that's actually a bespoke piece from a renowned artisan, accessorized with a minimalist, almost invisible smartwatch. My status-conscious family will likely misread it as me trying too hard with limited means, a desperate attempt to fit in. My hair is pulled back into a sleek, understated style, another detail they'll probably interpret as me not being able to afford a proper styling. Mark, my ever-vigilant general manager, spots me immediately. His eyes widen slightly in question. I rarely come in through the front entrance as a guest. I give him a subtle shake of my head and mouth. Not yet. He nods discreetly, his expression shifting back to his usual composed professionalism. From the entryway, I can already see them. They've requested the private dining room, of course, always seeking exclusivity. They're arranged like a tableau of old money affluence, my mother Eleanor in a Chanel suit, her pearls gleaming. My father Alistair examining the wine list with an exaggerated, almost theatrical concentration. Chloe, my sister, draped in what looks like new season Gucci, sits next to her fiancé Elijah, a man I don't recognize with slicked back hair and a watch that seems to catch every errant ray of light. Liam, my brother, and his wife Sarah complete the picture, both in power suits, as though they'd come straight from a high-stakes board meeting. My hostess, a charming woman named Celeste, approaches with a warm smile. "Good evening, Mr. Ev." Sir," she corrects herself just in time. "Your party is already seated. May I show you to their table?" "Thank you, Celeste," I murmur, appreciating her quick thinking and discretion. As we approach, my mother notices me first. Her eyes perform the quick, practiced assessment I remember from childhood. A head-to-toe scan that calculates the approximate value of my appearance and inevitably finds it wanting. "Blake!" she says, rising to air-kiss my cheek, her voice carrying a practiced veneer of warmth. "You've finally arrived." We were beginning to wonder. "I'm exactly on time, Mother," I reply, checking my smartwatch. 7:00 p.m. on the dot. My father stands, giving me a stiff hug that ends with an awkward pat on the back. "You look healthy," he offers, which in Mitchell speak means I haven't maintained the borderline unhealthy slenderness prized in our social circle. Chloe barely bothers to stand, offering her cheek for me to kiss. "This is Elijah," she announces, as her fiancé rises and extends his hand. His grip is too firm a power move I recognize from countless business meetings. MIT undergrad, Stanford MBA. He introduces himself, not a "nice to meet you," or "I've heard about you," just credentials and status. The Evans family love language. Liam gives me a more genuine greeting, though Sarah's smile seems strained. I later learned she'd been the one tasked with finding this impressively exclusive restaurant for tonight's dinner, and she's nervous about whether it will meet everyone's lofty standards. "Well," my mother says, as I take the last empty seat, "we've already ordered champagne." I hope that's acceptable. I notice they've chosen the second most expensive option on our list. Showy, but not reckless typical. The restaurant hums with the energy I've worked so hard to cultivate. The lighting is dim enough for intimacy, but bright enough to appreciate the artistic presentation of each dish. The sound level perfectly balances conversation and privacy. The tables are spaced just so, close enough to create energy, far enough apart for discretion. Every detail has been my decision, from the linen weight to the custom-designed chairs that encourage diners to linger without becoming uncomfortable. I watch the staff's subtle reactions as they realize I'm sitting with guests. Marco, our head sommelier, catches my eye as he approaches with the champagne. The slightest raise of his eyebrow asks if I want him to acknowledge me. I give an imperceptible shake of my head. "Excellent choice," he says to my father, instead presenting the bottle with practiced elegance before beginning to pour. "We're celebrating an engagement," my father announces, unnecessarily clearly, hoping for special treatment. "Congratulations," Marco replies smoothly. "Aurora is honored to host such a special occasion." "I'm surprised you managed a reservation," I say innocently, I've heard it's quite difficult. Elijah leans forward. I know people, he says with a wink so smug, I have to suppress an eye roll. Called in a favor with a client who's friendly with the management. I bite my tongue. The client is likely Richard Thorne, one of our largest tech investors, who occasionally requests tables for business associates. I make a mental note to speak with him about Elijah. Well, aren't you resourceful? I murmur, raising my champagne flute to Chloe and Elijah. A perfect match, and a brilliant future, my father declares. We clink glasses, and I take a small sip, noting that the champagne is served at the precise temperature I've trained my staff to maintain. Then my mother sets down her glass and fixes me with her attention. Tell us, Blake, what have you been up to these past few years? You've been so mysterious. The table's focus shifts to me, 5 pairs of eyes, evaluating, ready to judge. I've been working in tech, I say, simply. Learning, growing, still with that coding phase. Chloe sighs as though I've admitted to a regrettable addiction. I thought surely by now you'd have moved on to something more substantial. Not everyone can handle the corporate path, Liam adds, managing to make his defense sound like criticism. Elijah looks confused. What exactly do you do? Line code, freelance IT. Various roles, I've worn many hats, I answer vaguely. Well, we're just glad you're managing to support yourself, my mother says with a fake graciousness. I know so well, though we've always said our door is open if things get too challenging. I notice Jessica, one of our most experienced servers, approaching with the amuse-bouche, a bite-sized sphere of compressed green apple topped with ginger foam, and a micro-basil leaf sourced from our rooftop hydroponic garden. Compliments of the kitchen, she announces, carefully placing one before each diner. Her eyes meet mine, briefly a flash of loyalty, before she slips back into professional mode. Is this all? Chloe asks, examining the single bite with disappointment. I'm famished. It's an amuse-bouche, I explain, a palate opener. The meal hasn't actually started yet. I know what an amuse-bouche is, Blake, she snaps. I'm not culturally illiterate just because I chose law instead of playing with apps. I watch as they each taste my creation. My mother takes the smallest possible bite, ever conscious of calories. My father pops the whole thing in his mouth, barely pausing to taste it. Liam and Sarah at least seem to appreciate it, while Elijah makes a show of analyzing the flavors, like a wine connoisseur, using tech terms that make no culinary sense. Only Chloe leaves hers untouched. I don't do experimental things, she declares, though the green apple is far from experimental. It's a classic French technique with a modern twist perfected over months of trial and error. As our server clears the plates, I catch the flash of disappointment in Jessica's eyes at Chloe's untouched creation. In that moment, I feel protective, not of myself, but of my staff who take such pride in our work. I've built Aurora not just as a restaurant, but as a family of sorts, one bound by shared passion rather than DNA. The evening is just beginning, but already I can feel the old dynamic settling in. I'm the outsider, the one who chose the wrong path, whose choices need justification. But unlike the Blake of 7 years ago, I now sit at this table with a secret strength, one that will soon turn this entire dynamic on its head. The interrogation continues, a feast of condescension. So tell us about the wedding plans, I said deliberately, shifting attention back to Chloe as our first course arrived, a delicate composition of house-made ricotta heirloom tomatoes and basil oil that had taken me months to perfect. Chloe brightened immediately. We've booked St. Thomas Church, of course. Reception at the plaza for 400 guests, though Mother thinks we should cut it to 350. The guest list is getting unwieldy. The Astors and the Bennetts aren't speaking since that unfortunate yacht incident, so we can't seat them in the same section, my mother interjected. I suppressed a smile. The gravity with which they discussed these social calculations never ceased to amaze me. 400 seems excessive, I ventured, taking a bite of the tomato dish. Elijah leaned forward. It's networking, not just celebration. Half those invitations are relationship investments. Precisely, my father agreed. Elijah understands the social capital aspect. A wedding of this caliber opens doors. And what about you? Blake, Chloe asked, her tone suddenly sharp. Any prospects on your horizon? Or are you still too busy with your coding? I noticed she had barely touched her food, pushing the heirloom tomatoes around her plate with obvious disinterest. "I'm focused on my career right now," I answered simply. "Career," Liam repeated with a small laugh. "Is that what we're calling it?" My mother jumped in. "Blake, dear, surely by 32, you're thinking about settling down. There's that lovely daughter of the Whitmans. She's in private equity, I believe. Very stable. I'm not looking to be set up, mother." "Well, your options will get more limited with each passing year," she persisted, "especially in your situation." Before I could respond, our server presented the first course. I'd barely registered the taste of my own creation, too tense to properly enjoy it. "Is there a problem with the dish?" Jessica asked Chloe, noting her nearly full plate. "Too acidic," Chloe replied dismissively. "And the tomatoes could have been riper." I bit my tongue. Those tomatoes had been selected at their peak that very morning from an upstate farm that grew specifically for us. "I'm so sorry to hear that," Jessica said with practiced diplomacy. "I'll be sure to inform the kitchen." The second course arrived seared scallops with a brown butter emulsion and pickled ramps, a spring special I was particularly proud of. As the plates were set down, I watched my family's reactions. "Now this looks promising," my father declared, cutting into his scallop with his fork. Elijah swirled his wine, a Sancerre I had personally selected to pair with this course. "Decent wine list here. Not exceptional, but passable." Our sommelier Marco, overhearing this as he passed, shot me a quick glance. I gave him a subtle smile. Marco had been poached from a 3-star Michelin restaurant in Paris and had turned down offers from establishments around the world to work with me. "So," Blake Sarah began, clearly trying to include me. "Liam mentioned you're working in tech, but you never really specified what exactly you do." Before I could answer, Chloe cut in. "She's probably doing freelance IT somewhere, right, Blake? Using that computer science degree to fix printers and hand out routers." "Actually, I started—" "No shame in that," my father interrupted. "Everyone has to start somewhere. Though after 7 years, I would have expected some advancement." "I've advanced," I said quietly. "Into what?" Assistant manager at Geek Squad Chloe laughed at her own joke. Chloe, Liam warned, showing a rare moment of defense. "What? I'm just being realistic." She chose to abandon her education for this passion project. Actions have consequences. I took a sip of wine, allowing the familiar notes to center me. "And how is law treating you?" Chloe still at Henderson and Block. Her expression tightened. "I'm between positions at the moment, actually. Taking time to plan the wedding." "She was working too many hours," Elijah interjected. I told her, "My wife doesn't need to kill herself at some firm once we're married. She can do charity work like my mother." I noticed the flash of something, resentment, frustration, in Chloe's eyes, before she smoothed her expression back to placid agreement. The third course arrived, a pasta dish featuring hand-rolled tagliatelle with spring peas pancetta and mint, one of our signature dishes that had been featured in Food and Wine. "The portion size here is ridiculous," my mother commented, looking at the artfully plated pasta. "All this expense for 3 bites. It's about quality over quantity," mother, I replied. "The tasting menu is designed to take you through multiple flavors and textures. In my day, restaurants gave you a proper meal for your money," my father grumbled. "This new cuisine nonsense is just a way to charge more for less food." I watched as Elijah cut into his pasta, rather than twirling it, breaking the delicate strands I had rolled by hand that morning. "So how exactly are you affording a place like this on a tech service salary?" Chloe asked bluntly. "This is one of the most expensive restaurants in the city." I felt all eyes turn to me. "I manage my finances carefully," I replied. "Oh, please," Chloe scoffed. "A dinner here costs more than you probably make in a month. Who are you dating? Is he paying for this?" "I'm not dating anyone," I said evenly. "Then how can you possibly afford this place?" she pressed. "Are you in debt, maxing out credit cards to keep up appearances?" Chloe, Liam warned again, looking uncomfortable. "No, I want to know," she insisted. We all rearranged our schedules for this dinner that she suggested at one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Either she's being financially irresponsible or she's not being honest about her situation. The fourth course arrived, a perfectly cooked duck breast with cherry gastrique and farro. Chef Maria, who ran the kitchen when I wasn't on the line, had executed it flawlessly. "This duck is undercooked," Elijah announced after one bite. I looked at his plate. The duck was a perfect medium rare, exactly as it should be. It's meant to be served that way, I explained. Medium rare is the optimal temperature for duck breast. I prefer my meat well done, he declared, motioning for a server. When Jessica approached, he spoke without looking at her. This is raw. Take it back and cook it properly. I saw the flash of annoyance in Jessica's eyes, quickly masked by professional courtesy. Of course, sir. My apologies. As she took his plate, I caught her eye and gave a slight nod. She would know to have the kitchen prepare a new breast, rather than ruining the existing one by overcooking it. Really, Blake, my mother said once Jessica had gone. You still haven't answered Chloe's question. How are you affording this dinner? The tension at the table was palpable now. I could feel the familiar tightness in my chest, the same feeling I'd had during countless family dinners growing up. The sense of being cornered, judged, and found wanting, before I'd even had a chance to speak. But I wasn't that same insecure young woman anymore. I had built something I was proud of, something that was entirely mine. For a moment, I considered revealing everything, right then, watching their expressions change as they realized whose restaurant they were sitting in, whose food they had been critiquing so carelessly. Before I could decide, Elijah's overcooked duck returned, now lacking all the tenderness and complexity it had originally possessed. Much better, he declared after one bite, though I could see from across the table that it was now dry and tough. My father signaled for the wine list again. Let's order another bottle. Something more impressive this time. As Marco approached with the leather-bound list, my father made a show of examining it, finally pointing to one of our most expensive options, a Bordeaux priced at over $2,000. This one should be adequate, he declared. I knew that bottle intimately. I had selected it during a trip to France last year, meeting with the vintner personally. It was spectacular, but completely wrong for the current course and the ones to follow. May I suggest something that might pair better with the remaining dishes, I ventured. My father waved me off. I think I know my wines, Blake. Marco caught my eye, silently asking for direction. I gave him a small nod. Let my father have his way. This wasn't the hill to die on. As the evening progressed through the final savory course and into dessert, a deconstructed lemon tart that was one of my personal favorites, the jabs continued. Every dish met with some criticism. Every attempt I made to contribute to the conversation somehow twisted into evidence of my failure. By the time coffee was served, I felt emotionally drained. The double burden of enduring my family's condescension while watching them thoughtlessly critique my life's work was becoming unbearable. Then came the moment I'd been both dreading and anticipating, the check. The revelation, the true master of Aurora. Marcus approached with the black leather folder containing the bill, placing it discreetly in the center of the table. My father reached for it immediately, a reflex of patriarchal duty, but Elijah intercepted. Please, Alistair, allow me, he said with the practiced smoothness of someone who has turned even generosity into a power move. Consider it my treat to celebrate the occasion. My father made the expected token protest before acquiescing. I watched as Elijah opened the folder, his expression shifting from a confident smile to barely concealed shock as he registered the total. Is there a problem? My father asked, noticing the change. No. Elijah recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. Just confirming the calculation. I knew exactly what he was looking at: a dinner for 7 with premium wine pairings, special off-menu requests, and that $2,000 bottle would run well over $10,000. Not outrageous for a restaurant of Aurora's caliber, but certainly a statement. He reached for his wallet, extracting a black credit card with deliberate slowness, making sure everyone noticed its exclusive sheen. Chloe, perhaps sensing his discomfort, chose that moment to circle back to her earlier interrogation. So, Blake, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. You never did explain how you're managing to contribute to this extravagant dinner. We wouldn't want you stretching yourself financially. All eyes turned to me again. I could feel the familiar dynamic asserting itself: Chloe, the successful one. Me, the struggling disappointment. I can cover my portion, I said simply. Can you, though? She pressed, leaning forward. Because we all know what tech freelance pays. Can you even afford this place? The table fell silent. The question hung in the air, so deliberately insulting that even my parents looked uncomfortable. Chloe, my mother murmured. Perhaps this isn't— No, I want to know, Chloe insisted, eyes locked on mine. We've spent the entire evening pretending that everything's fine, that Blake's choice to throw away her education hasn't left her struggling. I think we deserve some honesty. I felt a hot flush rising from my chest to my face. 7 years of distance, of building my own life and success, and nothing had changed. I was still the family disappointment, still being asked to justify my existence. Elijah perhaps sensing an opportunity to reassert control after the check shock joined in. If you need help with your portion, just say so. No shame in that. I don't need help, I said, my voice tight. Then how exactly are you paying for this? Chloe demanded. A meal here costs more than you probably make in a month. I opened my mouth to respond, to finally reveal everything, when Elijah suddenly frowned at the bill. Wait, there's a mistake here, he announced. They've only charged us for the wines, not the food. He signaled sharply for Marcus. Excuse me, there's an error on our check. Marcus approached our table with perfect timing, as though he'd been waiting for this moment. In reality, he probably had been. My staff knew me well enough to be watching this drama unfold. Is there a problem, sir? He asked. Yes, you've only charged us for the beverages, not the meal, Elijah said, pointing at the bill. Marcus looked at the check, then at me, his expression questioning. In that moment, I made my decision. The charade had gone on long enough. I gave Marcus a slight nod. There's no error, Sir Marcus said smoothly. The dinner portion has been taken care of. By whom? My father asked, frowning. Marcus turned to me, his professional demeanor giving way to a warm smile. Welcome back, Ms. Evans. Your usual table is ready for your meeting with the investors. Would you like me to handle the situation first? The silence that fell over the table was absolute. 6 pairs of eyes turned to me in various stages of confusion and disbelief. Thank you, Marcus, I said, my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Yes, please close out Mr. Harrington's beverage tab. The rest is on the house as usual. Very good, Ms. Evans, he replied, taking the folder from Elijah's now slack grip. Chef Maria mentioned she'd like your opinion on the new spring menu items when you have a moment. I'll stop by the kitchen before my meeting, I assured him. As Marcus departed, I finally looked directly at my family. Their expressions ranged from confusion to shock to the first dawning of understanding. What is happening? My mother finally managed. I took a deep breath. The moment I had both dreaded and secretly anticipated for 7 years had arrived. Welcome to Aurora, I said simply. My restaurant. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. My father was the first to recover his expression, shifting from confusion to calculation. Your restaurant, he repeated carefully. You work here. No, father, I clarified, feeling a strange calm settle over me. I own Aurora. I'm the executive chef and sole proprietor. That's impossible, Chloe blurted. This is one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. It's been featured in major magazines. Yes, I agreed. Food and Wine last month. Bon appétit before that. The New York Times gave us 4 stars in their review last year. Elijah was staring at me, as though I'd suddenly started speaking in tongues. But you said you worked in tech. You were vague about everything, because I wanted to see how you would treat me if you thought I was struggling, I explained. And you've all made that abundantly clear tonight. My mother's hand fluttered to her pearls, her go-to gesture when socially destabilized. Darling, why wouldn't you tell us about this? Achievement, the way she emphasized achievement, spoke volumes. Success made my choices retroactively acceptable, in a way passion alone never could. Would you like the full story? I asked, looking around the table. Without waiting for an answer, I continued. After I left 7 years ago, I moved to the city with what little savings I had. I rented a tiny room in an apartment with 3 roommates in Queens. For the first year, I worked 3 jobs. Prep cook at a bistro from 5 a.m. to noon, line cook at a midtown restaurant from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m., and weekend shifts at a bakery. I took a sip of water, noting their uncomfortable expressions. I slept 4 hours a night. I had blisters and burns up and down my arms. I studied technique obsessively in my rare free moments. My mentor, Chloe, the tech genius, who initially encouraged me to pursue my own path, took me under her wing. I became her lead developer within 18 months. Liam was watching me with what appeared to be genuine interest. Sarah looked impressed. My parents seemed frozen in a state of reassessment. 2.5 years ago, I continued, I was showcasing my AI prototypes at a private tech event. A guest, Mr. James Warren of Warren Capital, tried one of my AI-optimized dishes and asked to meet the chef. He was surprised to find someone so young had created what he called the most innovative culinary experience he'd tasted in years. I gestured around us. James became my first investor. We found this space, which was a failed nightclub at the time. I developed the concept, designed the menu, hired the staff, oversaw every detail from the lighting fixtures to the custom plateware. The restaurant became the perfect live laboratory for my AI. But the cost, my father said, his mind still seemingly stuck on the finances. A restaurant of this caliber in this location, it must have required millions. 3.4 million for the initial investment, I confirmed. James brought in 2 other investors. We opened to immediate acclaim, partly due to his endorsement and industry connections. 6 months in, we were profitable. 3 months after that, I used the restaurant's success to secure a loan and buy out my investors. I've been sole owner for over a year now. That's why you suggested we meet here. Chloe realized her voice small. You knew all along. Actually, no, I corrected her. Sarah chose this restaurant, isn't that right, Sarah? All eyes turned to Liam's wife, who blushed deeply. I had no idea, Blake, she stammered. The concierge at Liam's firm recommended it as the most impressive new restaurant in the city. I swear I didn't know it was yours. Of course you didn't, I assured her. No one in the family knew. That was deliberate on my part. But why keep it secret, my mother pressed. We're your family. We would have been proud. I couldn't help the sharp laugh that escaped me. Would you, the same family who called my passion a hobby and childish, who cut me off completely when I chose my own path, who just minutes ago were making snide comments about my life choices, my father cleared his throat. Now, Blake, that's unfair. We were concerned about your stability, your future. If we'd known you had this kind of business acumen. That's exactly my point, I interrupted. You couldn't respect my passion alone. It only has value to you now that it comes with success and status. At that moment, Chef Maria approached our table in her crisp whites, with Maria Rodriguez Chef de Cuisine embroidered on the breast. She made an impressive figure. Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Evans, she said, but the Matsuhisa party has arrived for their tasting, and the Wall Street Journal wants to confirm your interview for next week's feature. Also, your publisher called about the cookbook cover design. I nodded. Thank you, Maria. Please tell them I'll be there shortly. As Maria departed, I registered the growing amazement on my family's faces. Cookbook, Chloe echoed. Coming out this fall with HarperCollins, I confirmed. 120 recipes with personal stories about how my AI helped optimize them for flavor and texture. Blake, my mother began her voice, taking on the coaxing tone she used when trying to manage a social situation. This is all so impressive. Why didn't you tell us sooner? We could have helped, supported you. The way you supported me when I needed it most, I asked quietly. By cutting me off completely, we thought it was a phase, my father protested. How were we to know you had this level of entrepreneurial spirit? You've clearly inherited my business sense. I felt a flash of anger at his attempt to claim credit for my success. I built this myself, I said firmly, without your connections, your money, or your support. Elijah, who had been suspiciously quiet, suddenly perked up. A cookbook deal. That must come with a substantial advance. And this place, he gestured around appreciatively, his earlier criticisms forgotten. It must generate significant revenue. Do you have plans for expansion? Perhaps a restaurant group. I have some contacts in hospitality investment who might be interested. I couldn't help but laugh at the transparency of this pivot from condescension to networking opportunity. I'm doing quite well with my current advisors, but thank you, I said. Chloe shot him a look of irritation before turning back to me. So all this time, while I thought you were struggling, you were actually succeeding building all this. Yes, I said simply. And tonight, she continued, her voice hardening. You let us sit here criticizing your food, your wine list, your portion sizes, all while knowing it was yours. I wanted to see how you would treat me if you thought I was still the family failure, I explained. And now I know. That seems manipulative, she snapped, but I could see the embarrassment behind her anger. More manipulative than asking how I could afford to eat here then suggesting I must be in debt or dating someone wealthy to afford a meal at this table, I countered. You weren't concerned about me, Chloe. You were enjoying what you thought was your superiority. The restaurant had gradually emptied as we talked, the evening service winding down. Marcus approached with a bottle. Your special reserve cognac, Ms. Evans, he said, for your investors' meeting. And Chef Maria says the kitchen is ready whenever you are. Thank you, Marcos, I replied. Please let Maria know I'll be there in 10 minutes. As he left, I turned back to my stunned family. I have a business to run, I said, rising from my seat. Thank you for coming this evening. The aftermath. A fragile new beginning, Blake. Wait, my mother said quickly, her voice laced with an unfamiliar urgency. Don't leave like this. We should celebrate your success. Perhaps we could all have brunch this weekend. Catch up properly. I looked at her, seeing for the first time not the intimidating figure of my childhood, but simply a woman trying to salvage her pride and position. I'll think about it, I said. But right now, I have investors waiting and a kitchen to oversee. As I turned to leave, Liam stood up. Blake, he said, his voice quieter than the others. For what it's worth, this is incredible. What you've built here, it's remarkable. I'm sorry for not supporting you sooner. Of all the reactions, his felt the most genuine. I gave him a small nod of acknowledgement before walking away from the table, where I had just changed the dynamics of my family forever. I had barely made it 10 steps when I heard the click of heels behind me. Turning, I found my mother hurrying to catch up, her perfectly composed facade beginning to crack. Blake, please, she said, lowering her voice. You can't just drop this revelation and walk away. We need to talk about this. I glanced toward the private dining room, where my actual investors, a group discussing funding my second restaurant concept, were waiting. I have a meeting, Mother. Postpone it, she insisted. This is family. Family hasn't been a priority for you in 7 years, I replied, keeping my voice steady. My business commitments don't suddenly become optional because you finally decided my career is worthy of your attention. The rest of the family had followed her, creating an awkward cluster near the bar area. My father looked distinctly uncomfortable, unused to not being in control of a situation. Chloe's expression wavered between resentment and something that might have been respect. Perhaps we could continue this conversation tomorrow, my father suggested in his problem-solving business tone. Dinner at our place. We have much to discuss, including how we might help you expand. My firm specializes in... Elijah added eagerly. I don't need your help, I interrupted firmly. I didn't build this place to finally win your approval. I built it because this is what I love, what I'm good at. The fact that it's successful doesn't suddenly make my passion more valid than it was 7 years ago. No one is saying that, darling, my mother backpedaled. We're simply proud of what you've accomplished. Are you proud, Mother? Or are you relieved that my choices no longer embarrass you socially? Her flinch told me I'd hit close to home. That's unfair, my father interjected. We've always wanted what's best for you. No, I corrected him. You wanted what aligned with your vision for me. There's a difference. Maria, my chef de cuisine, appeared at my side, her presence a welcome support. The Hartford group is asking if you'll be joining them soon, she said quietly. 5 minutes, I promised her. As Maria nodded and stepped away, I turned back to my family. I need to go. Blake, wait. Chloe stepped forward, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. I owe you an apology. The things I said tonight, they were unkind. They were honest, I replied. That's the silver lining of this evening. I got to see exactly how you all view me when you think I'm struggling. That's not fair. People make judgments based on the information they have, Liam interjected. You didn't know I was successful, I clarified, but you didn't know I was pursuing something I loved. That should have been enough for my family to show basic respect. A heavy silence fell over the group. You're right, my father finally said, surprising me. We should have supported your passion regardless of its outcome. Coming from him, this admission was significant. Richard Evans didn't acknowledge mistakes easily. Where do we go from here? My mother asked, genuine uncertainty in her voice. Another rarity. I took a deep breath considering the question. Despite everything, these people were my family. The hurt they'd caused was real, but so was our shared history. Complete estrangement had never been my goal, just enough distance to build my own life without their judgment clouding my decisions. I don't know yet, I answered honestly. but tonight has made one thing clear: if we're going to have any relationship moving forward, it needs to be on different terms. I'm not the family failure seeking redemption. I'm a successful chef and business owner who deserves the same respect you'd give any other professional. Of course, my father agreed quickly. And that means no more comments about my life choices, no more unsolicited career advice, and absolutely no attempts to network through my restaurant, I added with a pointed look at Elijah, who had the grace to look embarrassed. About Chloe's wedding, my mother began tentatively. "What about it?" I asked. "We'd still like you to be there," Chloe said, her voice softening. "As my sister, not as whatever we thought you were before tonight." I looked at her, trying to see past the years of competition and judgment. Despite everything, there had been good times too. Secrets shared as children, supporting each other through our first heartbreaks, inside jokes no one else understood. "I'll be there," I promised. Then, after a moment's consideration, I added, "And if you'd like, I could host a dinner for the wedding party here at Aurora. As my gift." Chloe's eyes widened. "You! You would do that after how we've treated you." "You're still my sister," I said simply. "But to be clear, this isn't me seeking your approval. It's me offering something I'm proud of on my own terms." "I understand," she said quietly, "and I would be honored." A genuine smile, the first of the evening, passed between us. "Now I really do need to go," I said, gesturing toward the private dining room. Of course, my father nodded. "Your business comes first." "Not always," I corrected him. "But tonight, yes." As they gathered their things to leave, I added, "I'm free for brunch on Sunday." "Not at your club, though. There's a small place in the East Village I think you should experience." "We'll be there," my mother promised, looking relieved at this small opening. I watched them file out of the restaurant, their perspectives irrevocably changed. As the door closed behind them, I let out a long breath, feeling oddly lighter. Maria approached again. "Everything okay?" "Getting there," I replied. "Family is complicated." "Tell me about it." She laughed. "My mother still introduces me as her daughter, who works at a restaurant like I'm a teenage waitress at Denny's." I smiled, grateful for her understanding. "Let's go talk spring menu. I have some new ideas I'm excited about." As we walked toward the kitchen, my sanctuary, my achievement, my true home, I realized that the most important revelation of the evening wasn't showing my family what I'd built. It was fully recognizing it myself. I had created this success on my own terms, regardless of their approval. And that knowledge was worth more than any validation they could ever offer. Conclusion. The path less judged, 2 weeks passed like a whirlwind. Spring menu planning meetings with my publisher about the cookbook layout and preliminary discussions about a potential second Aurora Labs location kept me gratefully busy. But thoughts of that family dinner remained surfacing in quiet moments, demanding reflection. Sunday brunch had gone surprisingly well. I'd taken my family to the Daily Grind, a hole-in-the-wall gem, run by a former colleague from my early days working the line. My parents had been visibly uncomfortable at first, with the mismatched chairs and graffiti-decorated walls, but the food, unpretentious yet masterfully executed, had won them over. "I never knew simple eggs could taste like this," my father had admitted, mopping up the last of his shakshuka with homemade sourdough. Small steps. Not a complete transformation, but an opening. Now, sitting at my usual table after closing time, I watched the staff complete their final duties. Jessica was counting the register while humming softly. Marcus and Maria were discussing wine pairings for tomorrow's private event. My phone buzzed with a text from Chloe, wedding planning nightmare. Florists just doubled their quote. "Any chance you're free for coffee tomorrow? Could use some straight talk from someone who won't just tell me what I want to hear." I smiled slightly at this unexpected request for my opinion. Another small step. I texted back, confirming a time and place. The relationship with my family was evolving into something I couldn't have predicted, not the unconditional embrace I might have once craved, but something potentially more valuable. A measured respect between adults with different values and paths. My mother had called 3 times in the past 2 weeks, her usual formality softening into genuine questions about my work. My father had sent an article about disruptive tech in the hospitality industry, a silent acknowledgement that he was trying to understand my world. Even Liam had reached out, asking if he could bring his children to see the kitchen sometime. "I want them to know they have options," he'd said. "That success doesn't have to look the same for everyone." These were fragile beginnings, not the dramatic reconciliation of a Hollywood movie. Real healing, I was learning, happens in quiet moments and small gestures, in the gradual rewriting of old patterns. The most significant change, though, wasn't in my family's perception of me, but in how I had finally stopped measuring my worth through their eyes. The validation I had once desperately sought from them now felt strangely unnecessary. I had proven myself, not to them, but to myself. This realization had rippled through other areas of my life as well. I'd launched a mentorship program for young tech enthusiasts from disadvantaged backgrounds, offering them the guidance and opportunity one had fought so hard to find. Every Saturday morning, the Aurora Labs kitchen transformed into a classroom for 8 aspiring culinary tech artists who reminded me of my younger self, passionate, determined, in need only of someone who believed in their potential. One of them, Zoe, had shown such promise that I'd offered her an apprenticeship. Watching her confidence grow with each new skill mastered brought a satisfaction different from any professional accolade I'd received. Chef Jessica's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "We're all set for closing. Anything else you need before we head out?" "No, thank you," I smiled. "You all did amazing work tonight." As the staff filed out calling their good nights, I remained at my table notebook open to a blank page. I'd been trying to articulate the introduction to my cookbook, struggling to find words that captured my journey. In the quiet of the empty restaurant, I finally began to write. Technology has always been my truest language. When words failed, I spoke through code. When paths seemed unclear, I followed my algorithms. The dishes in this book are more than recipes. They're chapters of a life lived in pursuit of authenticity rather than approval. 7 years ago, I stood at a crossroads between expectation and passion. Choosing the latter cost me dearly at first, but ultimately led to the richest feast I could have imagined, not merely in professional success, but in the discovery that true wealth isn't measured by external validation or material achievement, but by the courage to honor your own voice, even when it speaks in whispers against the shouts of doubt. I set down my pen, the words finally flowing freely. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, a difficult vendor negotiation, Chloe's wedding planning drama, finalizing the cookbook introduction. But tonight, in this moment of quiet reflection, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been nights of exhaustion so complete I'd fallen asleep in kitchen corners during rare breaks, burns, and cuts that left scars still visible on my hands, moments of doubt so intense I'd questioned everything. But I had persevered not because I needed to prove my worth to others, but because I couldn't imagine living any other way. In choosing authenticity over approval, I'd found something more valuable than either success or family validation. I'd found myself. Life lesson for you: have you ever had to choose between meeting others' expectations and following your own heart? It's a tough road, but as Blake's story shows, the most meaningful success is measured not by others' standards, but by the joy and purpose you find along your own path. Remember, your worth isn't defined by someone else's opinion, but by your courage to be authentically you. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more true stories of resilience and triumph, and share with someone who might need a reminder that the most important approval comes from within. Thank you for joining me on this journey.